Hi, my name is Alif Akram. So I will present about Cyberdynamic Holding Berhad. So for the first slide is scandal identification of Cyberdynamic. Cyberdynamic was once a reputable Malaysian engineering company operating in the oil and gas industry. However, in 2021, KPMG, which is its external auditor, flagged RM 4.5 billion worth of suspicious transactions. This marked the beginning of one of Malaysia's most high-profile corporate governance failures, leading to massive investor concern and regulatory intervention.
So next is the part of the scandal and the company involved behind the Bearing Bank scandal. For the Bearing Banks, first one is the one of respected bank in the United Kingdom. Bearing Bank was not just any bank; it was 2003 30 years old institution with a royal legacy. It started as a merchant bank and grew into a global financial player, but despite its strong reputation, it collapsed due to major scandals. So next, the Nick's lesson scandal and the secret account. Um, Nick Lesser had too much control. He was both making trade and handling the back office record, which should never happen in a well-managed company. This led him up his loss using a secret account, hoping to recover by taking bigger risks, but it only got worse. And next, huge loss, bank collapse and take over by AING Group. Lesson Action cost the bank 827 million. The final blow come after the Cobra. It quick affect the market. Baring could not survive the loss and was sold to a Dutch bank, ING, for only £1. This become a turning point in finance, showing the world the importance of a risk management in control, internal control, and corporate governance.
China Evergrande Group, founded in 1996 by Zhu Jiayin, was once the second largest property developer in China and a Fortune Global 500 company. Known for its aggressive debt-fueled expansion, Evergrande diversified far beyond real estate into electric vehicles, healthcare, and sports. Amassing over 300 billion USD in liabilities by 2021. The scandal erupted when the Chinese government introduced the three red lines policy to limit corporate borrowing, exposing Evergrande's fragile financial positions. The company default on debt payments, halted construction on over 1.6 million pre-sold homes, and sparked nationwide protests from home buyers and suppliers. In 2023, Chinese regulators revealed that Evergrande had fraudulently inflated its revenue by 77 billion USD, leading to the detention of its founder and other executive. In January 2024, a Hong Kong court ordered the company's liquidation, marking the collapse of one of China's largest and most controversial corporate empires.
The recruit scandal in Japan in 1988 was primarily an insider trading and corruption scandal. The scandal involved key officials from the Japanese government, governed by the Liberal Democratic Party, engaging in illegal and unethical shares acquirement of Recruit subsidiary Recruit Cosmos. So this case involved Recruit and advertising and HR company. They offer shares of their real estate subsidiary, Recruit Cosmos, to high-profile politicians, government officials, and business execs in 1986 before it went public. After they went public, the share price jumped up, and the one receiving the shares before the IPO made significant profits. While it is not explicitly illegal to distribute stocks before going public in Japan, the involvement of politicians and the massive profit that they generated was widely seen as a form of influence peddling and bribery. Bribery. The public viewed the action as a way to gain political favors and goodwill for Recruit. The scandal implicated high-ranking officials, including Prime Minister Noboru Takeshita, which led to numerous investigations and erosion of public trust in the LDP government.
Now, for the background of Daewoo Group. Daewoo Group once a symbol of South Korean economic miracle because it was one of the largest chaebols or family-run conglomerate in the country. The reason for its collapse was it was dissolved in 1999 under massive debt. It marked one of the largest corporate frauds globally for that time, and its chairman, Kim Woo-chung, and founder, was accused of masterminding the scandal.
So for the next slide is history of the scandal and company background. To understand the scandal, we need to look at how it unfolded. KPMG identified questionable transaction involving 11 customers and missing documentation. In response, the company abruptly terminated KPMG and brought in Ernst & Young for an independent review. However, Superdynamic failed to disclose the full findings, raising further concern. Instead of reassuring stakeholders, the company action deepened the crisis.
Next is the history of the scandal and the background of the company of Bearing Banks. The first one, Bearing Bank, is the oldest financial institution in the UK. Bearing Bank was one of the oldest and most prestigious financial institution in the United Kingdom. Established in 1762, the bank built a reputation by managing the finance of the British royal family and growing into a respected global investment bank. Next lesson and the beginning of the crisis in Singapore. In the early 1990, a young and ambitious trader, Nate Lesson, was sent to Baring Singapore branch. His job was to conduct safe arbitrage trade, but he began making risky bets using derivatives tied to the Nikkei 225 index. When loss began, he hid them using a secret account number 88888. Next, Baring Bank collapsed due to secret trading. Lesson had full control over both trading and settlement, which allowed him to hide loss undetected. The crisis escalated in January 1995 when the earthquake shook Japan's market, magnifying his loss. In total, he lost over 800 millions, more than the bank's capital, leading Baring to declare bankrupt within day and be sold to ING for just £1.
The company specialized in large-scale residential projects and later expanded into various non-core sectors, including electric vehicles through Hengqi, healthcare, tourism, and professional football. At its peak, Evergrande was listed among the Fortune Global 500 and was seen as a symbol of China's rapid urbanization and real estate boom. However, its growth was largely fueled by excessive borrowing and aggressive pre-sales of uncompleted housing projects, which led the company to accumulate over 300 billion USD in liabilities by 2021, making it the world's most indebted properties firm.
Now, a brief overview of Recruit Group, focusing on its company background and the scandal they faced in the late 1980s. So, Recruit Group was founded in 1960 by founder Hiromasa Ezoe in Tokyo, Japan. They started off as a small advertising agency for University of Tokyo's newspaper. And by 1963, the company had shifted their focus to job placement magazines, which led to its eventual name, Recruit. Over the years, Recruit expanded aggressive into sectors like real estate, telecom, and finance. And their subsidiary, Recruit Cosmos, became one of Japan's top condominium developers. And in 1988, the company became the center of Japan's biggest post-war political corruption that we are discussing right now. The scandal involved the distribution of unlisted shares of Recruit Cosmos to over 100 powerful individuals, including politicians, bureaucrats, and media executives, before the company went public. After it went public, These individuals made huge profits, which the public saw as a form of bribery or influence peddling. The scandal had some serious consequences. It led to the resignation of Prime Minister Noboru Takeshita. Multiple cabinet ministers also resigned, and top executives from Recruit, the company's founder, Ezoe, also stepped down. Despite this, Recruit survived. Through rebranding and strategic silence, it reinvented itself as a global HR tech company, now owning major platforms like Indeed and Glassdoor.
Now, for the rise and expansion of Daewoo Group. Daewoo Group was founded in 1967 by Kim Woo-chong as a small textile company. Then, it grew into South Korea's second largest chaebol, just behind Hyundai. It benefited from state-backed, export-led development policies of the country. The main industry that they were in were shipbuilding, automobiles, construction, finance, electronics, and more. By mid-1990s, they had over 275 subsidiaries and over 300,000 employees worldwide. The company began to fall because of its expansion driven by excessive debt financing, and this created a web of complex intercompany relationships within the conglomerate. When the 1997 Asian financial crisis hit, the company's debt levels become unsustainable. Unlike others, they were refused to downsize or restructure the company and attempted to maintain prestige through accounting fraud and unauthorized borrowing.
For this slide, it's gonna be key issues in the scandal. This scandal revealed several key issues. First is the company had inflated its revenue and lacked documentation to support its financial. Second, there was a major breakdown in governance, especially with a weak audit committee and poor board oversight. Instead of cooperating with regulators, Sebudhanami filed lawsuit against KPMG and Bursa Malaysia, showing its disregard for accountability and transparency.
Next is the key issues in the scandal of the bearing banks. So next for the bearing bank, first one, no separation of the duties between front office and back office. So Nick Lesson was in charge of both trading and record keeping, which create a major conflict of interest. Without segregation of duties, people hide loss easily, exposing a serious flaw in bearing internal controls. And number two, full trust without supervision by management. Senior management blindly trust lesson report and never question by the source of his profit. This allowed him to continue risky trading with a larger sum without anyone truly understand the risk involved. And number three, lack of an effective risk management system. There was no centralized risk management function at Bearings. No one was monitoring or flagging unusual trading activity, which allowed Lesson to engage in illegal trading without detection.
The Evergrande scandal was driven by several key issues, the most critical being its excessive debt and over-leveraged businesses model, which left the company with over 300 billions USD in liabilities by 2021. It heavily relied on pre-selling uncompleted properties to finance new projects, creating a risky cycle of borrowing and building. When the Chinese government introduced the three red lines policy in 2020 to limit reckless borrowing in the real estate sector, Evergrande failed to meet all thresholds, leading to a severe liquidity crisis. The company's failure to deliver over 1.6 million pre-sold homes triggered nationwide protests and mortgage boycotts. Additionally, Evergrande was found to have fraudulent inflated its revenue by 564 billions, exposing deep weaknesses in corporate governance, transparency, and financial reporting. Poor oversights, high risk diversification into non-core businesses, and the absence of effective risk controls further compounded the crisis, leading to the company's eventual collapse and court order liquidation in 2024.
Now there are several key issues of the Recruit scandal. Firstly is the corrupt distribution of pre-IPO shares. So Recruit Cosmos distributed their shares to targeted politicians, bureaucrats and business leaders. Later, share prices jumped when Cosmos went public. The recipients sold their positions, raking in huge profits. This reveals use of political favors and insider trading. Next issue is political influence and regulatory manipulation. So Recruit, through share distribution, secured favorable treatment for contracts and real estate approvals. And ministries were influenced, regulations were bypassed and lucrative deals from contracts secured as a result from these shares. It showed a conflict of corporate interest and government power. Lastly, Recruit execs attempted cover-up and bribed political opposition figures to stay silent, and this also backfired publicly.
The key issues in Daewoo's Group scandal were accounting fraud, illegal borrowing and embezzlement, and poor corporate governance. For the accounting fraud part, the company overstated profits by 41 billion US dollars. The company used false transactions, fake sales, and falsified balance sheets. And then its losses were deliberately hidden from financial statements. The company also forged documents to secure massive loans. It misled its lenders, both domestic and international. It underreported its loan liabilities. And a staggering $22 billion were embezzled by Kim Woo-chung and its executives. The funds were illegally transferred to an overseas or offshore accounts. There are no checks and balances in the company, and the company is highly centralized decision-making under the chairman. And lastly, it lacked independent oversight, which enabled long-term fraud.
Next is reason behind the scandal. So, why did the scandal occur? The root causes include aggressive expansion, which pressured management to manipulate numbers, and a board that lacked independence. Internal controls were ineffective, and there was no proper whistleblower policy in place. The company resists external scrutiny, which suggests a toxic leadership culture that ignored basic governance responsibilities.
Next is the debate the reason why it happened through bearing banks. So the first one, corporate governance failure. The scandal highlight a major failure in corporate governance lesson was given to much authority, which no proper overseeing. In healthy system, no one individual should have that much power without supervision. And next, lack of management understand of complex financial products. So senior management lack the technical knowledge to question the trade lesson was making. This blind reliance create a dangerous environment where no one critically review the financial decision. So next, lack of coordinate between headquarter and overseas branch. The disconnect between the UK head office and the Singapore branch allowed lesson to operate independently. This lack of coordination made it easier for him to hide his action and avoid detection.
The collapse of China Evergrande Group can be attributed to a mix of external corporate mismanagement and external regulatory and also economic factors. On one hand, Evergrande's leadership adopted an aggressive debt-fueled growth strategy, taking on over a 300 billion USD in liabilities and relying heavily on pre-selling uncompleted homes to finance future projects. Critics argue that poor financial discipline, weak internal controls, and reckless diversifications into unrelated sectors like electric vehicles and football created an unsustainable business model. On the other hand, some believe the crisis was accelerated by China's sudden regulatory tightening, particularly in 2020, introductions of the three red lines policy, which restricted further borrowing and left Evergrande unable to refinance its obligations. Additionally, systemic issues within China's real estate dependent economy, where developers assume perpetual demand and government supports, also contributed. Therefore, while Evergrande's internal decision made it vulnerable, the broader regulatory and economic environment helped trigger its collapse.
There are also some reasons why the recruit scandal happened. Firstly, it can be attributed to structural corruption and institutional weakness because corporations at that time are allowed to make political donations and favors in exchange for regulatory leniency and public contracts. Next is Japan's political financing practices. The system for political financing system in Japan incentivizes politicians to seek funds through non-transparent means. Lastly is corporate ambition and aggressive expansion. Hiromasa Ezoe, the founder, guided the firm with an aggressive growth strategy that leverages political connections to grow in their industry.
Now, to the main debate on why this scandal happened to Daewoo Group. So, as you know, Daewoo Group is a chaebol where it has a centralized culture and crony capitalism. Here, it had unquestioned authority of the chairman, Kim Woo-chung. The structure is hierarchical, loyalty-based, which discourage oversight. The culture also discourage internal dissent or transparency. And the company also has close ties with the military regimes of the 70s and 80s South Korea. This enabled preferential loans and regulatory leniency on the enforcement to the company. Moving on to the next point is weak regulatory framework. Pre-1999 South Korea had an inadequate financial regulation. They had poor audit practices and non-independent regulators. The regulators were lack in strength to challenge the major chaebols. The Daewoo Group also have an overambitious global expansion driven by the chairman for the global recognition, and its expansion into unprofitable ventures. And lastly, the financial stress was concealed through some of the project strength. And the last blow to this scandal is, of course, the Asian financial crisis, which happened in 1997. The crisis exposed Daewoo's over-leveraged position, and instead of doing a reform, the group intensified financial manipulation and tried to maintain investor confidence through fraud.
So for this slide, it's gonna be a company response to the scandal. So instead of managing the crisis responsibly, Dynamic responds defensively. After firing KPMG, they hired Nezia SSY and commissioned a review by Ernst and Young, but without the findings. The company also delayed key financial reports and took legal action against regulator. This decision only make it worse and led to criminal charges against the executive.
Next is how the company handled the scandal through bank bearings. So the first one, bank bearing and prepare for major financial crisis. When the loss were revealed, Bearing Bank was completely unprepared. There was no risk management plan or crisis team to respond. Senior management in London was shocked and failed to act quickly, which only worsened the situation and harmed the bank's reputation. Next, sale of Bearing Bank to ANG Group by the Bank of England. The Bank of England quickly arranged the sale of Bearing to ANG Group for just £1. This move was meant to protect customer, maintain financial stability, and resolve the crisis swiftly. While it prevented wider panic, it also marked the end of their 230-year legacy. So next, action again needs lesson and senior management failure. Although Nick Lesson were arrested for his action, many believe the very top executives also share the blame. Their lack of overseeing and failure to implement proper control allowed Lesson to continue and check until it was too late.
In response to the unfolding crisis, Evergrande attempted several measures to manage its financial scandal. Through most proof ineffective or were implemented too late. The company initially delayed debt repayment and proposed multiple restructuring plans for its offshore bondholders, including maturity extensions and asset swaps. Uh, it also began selling non-core assets such as stakes in its electric vehicles and property service divisions in an effort to raise quick liquidity. Publicly, Evergrande pledged to prioritize the completion of its stalls housing projects to restore some trust among 1.6 million affected home buyers, but progress was limited due to its ongoing cash shortage. Communication with investors and the public was often inconsistent, leading to confusion and eroding confidence. As the crisis deepened, Chinese regulators intervened, launching investigations into fraudulent activities and detailing founder Zhu Jiayin in 2023. Eventually, in January 2024, a Hong Kong court ordered the company's liquidation, effectively marking the failure of Evergrande's attempt to manage the scandal and restructuring its operation.
For question number 5 is how Recruit handle the scandal. First is the initial silence and denial. At the start, Recruit is silent. The chairman avoided public engagement with the media, but this later on intensified the media coverage and political influence, especially from the Communist Party. Second is suppressing investigation and media. Matsubara, a senior executive, sought to suppress opposition through bribing. He hid 10 million yen in a box of chocolates and gave to an opposing party to the LDP for them to stay silent. Later, this exchange was filmed and broadcasted publicly. Third is leadership resignation. Eventually, leadership resigns from mounting public pressure. Hiromasa Ezoe and several LDP ministers also resigned. Fourth is legal cooperation. Recruit then shifted to a more cooperative tone. They submitted records to prosecutors, which resulted in several senior executives' arrests.
Now, how Daewoo Group handled the scandal? Initially, Daewoo Group denied the scale of its debt and wrongdoing. The company lacked transparency in crisis management. The South Korean government launched major investigations because of that, and subsequently, Kim Woo-chung, the chairman, fled the country in 1999. But then, Daewoo Group received presidential pardon due to past contribution to the industrialization of South Korea. This sparked controversy over accountability and the justice system. Then, Daewoo Group faced corporate restructuring. The main group was dismantled, the core units were sold, merged, or restructured elsewhere. One of the subsidiaries, Daewoo Motors, acquired by an American company, General Motors, which then renamed it to GM Korea. Then, Daewoo Shipbuilding also got restructured, and the state recapitalized it to a new company.
Impacts on company, the consequences were severe. In the short term, Super Dynamic stock price collapsed by over 90% and trading was suspended. Credit ratings were downgraded and investor fled. In the long term, the company was delisted from Bursa Malaysia and faced ongoing legal action. The scandal also hurt Malaysia's reputation for corporate governance.
Next, the impact short-term and long-term financial reputation governance. For the bearing in the short term, the first one is financial loss and bankrupt. In the short term, bearing bond lost 827 million due to authorized trading, which exceeded the capital. This forced the bank into bankrupt almost overnight. And next, fall in reputation and loss of customer confidence. The collect the strawberry 230 years legacy, once seen as a prestigious and stable institution. Customer and the public quickly lost confidence in the banking system. Next, fall in the reputation and loss of customer confidence. Thousands of employees lost their job as the bank shut down operation, and many clients faced financial uncertainty. This had a major economic and social impact. Next, we go to the long-term impact. For the first one, trust in financial institution decline. In the long run, public trust in bank and financial institution decline significantly. People become more cautious about where and how they invest their money. Next, the United Kingdom financial image is tarnished. The scandal also tarnished the UK's financial reputation, raising global concerns about oversight and regulation within its banking sector. And lastly, global regulation are tightening and compliance costs are rising. While tighter global regulation help improve financial safety, they also lead to increased compliance costs for banks, making operation more complex and expensive in the long term.
The Evergrande scandal had severe short-term and long-term impacts on its finance, reputation, and governments. In the short term, the company default on debt obligations, halted construction on over 1.6 million homes, and triggered panic in China's real estate market, leading to massive financial losses for investors, contractors, and home buyers. Its reputation suffered immediate damage as protests erupted and public trust collapsed. Over time, the long-term affected the long-term effects become more pronounced, like Evergrande's liquidations in 2024 led to significant write-offs, especially for offshore creditors, and contributed to a broader slowdown in the property sector. Reputationally, the scandals tarnish not only Evergrande's image, but also global investor confidence in China's firms. From a government perspective, the case exposed critical failure in risk management, board oversight, and financial transparency. In response, Chinese regulators began tightening corporate governance rules and financial disclosure requirements for property developers, signaling a shift towards more responsible corporate behavior in the long run.
Now for the short-term and long-term impact of recruit scandal. Short-term effects of the recruit scandal were quite damaging to the reputation of the company, as it led to the resignation of its founder, Hiromasa Ezoe, the arrest of several of its executives, and closer attention to the firm by political authorities and by society. This scandal also resulted in the lack of trust about the integrity of the company, and it also disturbed its business relation and forces it to take the defensive position with legal compliance and internal arrangements. Nevertheless, in the long-term perspective, Recruit Group was capable of restoring and reorienting itself to the international human resource services and online platforms. The company was able to rebuild its image successfully by using strategic silence, rebranding, and avoiding direct conflicts with its traditional image in the end, thus becoming a big global actor right now with websites like Indeed and Glassdoor. As the scandal demonstrated, although immediate effects were quite significant, the long-term implications were mitigated by rebranding silently, with efforts combined with the willingness to adapt to the market despite no significant corporate reform or public accountability.
Now to the short and long-term impact of this scandal. In the short term, Daewoo Group had a massive financial fallout. They had over $80 billion in debt, which then triggered losses for domestic banks and international creditors. It tightened credit access during post-1997 recovery for South Korean companies. Then of course, job losses also occurred. Thousands lost jobs as subsidiaries shut down or were sold. This caused major impact on automotive and shipbuilding sectors of South Korea. On the long term, this scandal became a catalyst for reform. It introduced stronger corporate governance rules. South Korea began adopting the IFRS accounting standards and regulations to limit cross-affiliate debt guarantees. It also became a catalyst for institutional changes, which had a greater transparency and accountability across South Korea's corporate sector. And lastly, more independent board of directors and stricter audit practices.
So transparency was one of the most significant differentiators in how each company approached its crisis. So Barings Bank, while initially they are unaware of the scale of the losses, they was forced into full transparency after the collapse, with the Bank of England intervening quickly to sell the bank to ING. In contrast, Serba Dynamic and Evergrande Group demonstrated severe deficiencies in transparency. Serba refused to release their findings of an independent review and sued auditors and regulators, making it worse for stakeholder mistrust. Similarly, Evergrande concealed their insolvency for months, communicating only when public protests and defaults made the crisis unavoidable. Recruit Group, though initially silenced, they eventually cooperated with legal proceedings, while Daewoo Group initially denied wrongdoing but was later exposed through government investigation. Secondly, approaches to leadership responsibility vary widely. So Recruit Group followed Japanese corporate tradition by having its founder Hiromasa Ezoe resign as a symbolic gesture of accountability. However, this was seen as performative rather than substantive reform. Daewoo Group saw real consequences for its chairman Kim Woo-chung, who was arrested, tried and sentenced, though controversially pardoned later. In contrast, Serba Dynamic and Evergrande showed minimal internal accountability. Serba's executives continued denying wrongdoing and were only prosecuted after regulatory pressure, while Evergrande's founder was arrested years after the crisis began. Barings Bank placed the entire blame on trader Nick Leeson, with no consequences for senior management despite evident failures in oversight. Third, crisis response strategies reveal fundamental weaknesses in planning and integrity. Serba Dynamic and Evergrande Group both adopted defensive and reactive strategies. Serba sued its critics and changed auditors, while Evergrande attempted to sell assets and delay repayments with little transparency or long-term planning. Recruit Group initially attempted a cover-up, including an attempted bribe caught on camera, but shifted to legal cooperation and once public and political pressure mounted. Barings Bank lacked any crisis plan and collapsed swiftly, while Daewoo Group did not proactively process the scandal until the state intervention forced action. Fourth is legal cooperation and willingness to accept external scrutiny were also divergent. So Recruit Group, under pressure, they eventually provide all the documents and they also cooperate with prosecutors. Daewoo and Evergrande, they only respond after government crackdown, with the latter being liquidated by a Hong Kong court. So Barings Bank had no legal strategy as its sale was arranged externally. Serba Dynamic not only refused to cooperate but also legally attacked oversight institutions, a move that removed investor confidence. Lastly, long-term strategic adaptation varied from total collapse to successful reinvention. The group emerged as the most successful in the post-scandal transformation. Through strategic silence, avoidance of public reckoning and rebranding, Recruit transitioned into a global HR tech leader operating platforms like Indeed and Glassdoor. Barings Bank, Daewoo Group, and Evergrande were either dissolved, acquired, or liquidated. Serba Dynamic remains operational but severely weakened, with its credibility in question and its future uncertain.
Critique and company secretary review. From a company secretary perspective, Serba Dynamic failed on many fronts. The board lacked independence, internal audit were weak, and crisis management was poor. Instead of taking corrective action, the company chose a legal and defensive approach. A company secretary should have advised the board to uphold ethical practices, comply with regulations, and ensure transparency throughout the crisis.
Next is critique those strategies, pros and cons. For the first one, for the bearing banks, take over pros take over by ANG avoid bigger crises. On the positive side, ANG quick acquisition of bearing helped prevent a larger financial panic. It ensured customer accounts were protected and maintained stability in the financial market. Next, pros. If it has a strong crisis strategy, has open policies, and has board accountability. So, Bank could also address this issue if it all had a strong crisis strategy, had open policies, and had an accountable board of director to preserve and monitor the company. Next, cons: no crisis strategy and immediate action. Bearing Bank had no real crisis strategy in place. When the scandal came to light, the leadership did not respond quickly or decisively. There was no proper investigation, no stakeholder communication, and no one took responsibility. So the last one is cons. No transparency and accountability by the board of director. The company failed to be transparent and accountable. Stakeholders were left in the dark, and the board of director did not step up to take responsibility. This reflect very poor leadership and governance.
Evergrande's corporate strategies, while initially effective in driving rapid growth, ultimately proved unsustainable and deeply flawed. Its aggressive debt-fueled expansion enabled the company to dominate China's property market and achieve Fortune Global 500 status, but it also led to over 300 billion in liabilities and extreme vulnerabilities to tightening credit. The pre-sale model of financing uncompleted homes allowed quick capital generation but became a major liability when Evergrande failed to deliver over 1.6 million units, triggering public protests and mortgage boycotts. Diversifications into non-core sectors such as electric vehicle, sports, and healthcare aim to reduce reliance on real estate but lack clear strategy, resulting in capital losses and leadership distractions. In its attempt to manage the crisis, the company pursued asset sales and restructuring plans, but these efforts were reactive, inconsistent, and poorly communicated, further damaging investor confidence. Ultimately, the ultimately, while this strategy offer short-term advantage, there are long-term consequences. reveal critical weaknesses in financial disciplines, governance, and risk
Now to
management.
the critique of those strategies, both pros and cons, for the group. Cons number one is of course the indictment of the chairman Kim Woo-chung in 2007 signaled the seriousness about corporate accountability in South Korea. The president pardoned the chairman in 2007, which weakened public trust and the justice system. One of the pros is of course the adoption of IFRS accounting standards, which improve audit practices and promote corporate governance codes in South Korea. Then the second cons that can be given is the continued centralization of power in South Korea's various chaebols or family-run conglomerates. This is where corporate board of directors remain weak and lack autonomy.
So, suggestion as a company secretary. Moving forward, as a company secretary, I would suggest strengthening board and audit committee independence, implementing tighter internal control, and establishing an anonymous whistleblower channel. The board should receive regular governance training, and there should be full cooperation with regulators. Above all, my role would be to promote ethical decision making and safeguard the integrity of the company.
Next is the own suggestion as a company secretary. First one, clearly separation of duties between front office and back office. As a company secretary, I will first enforce a strict separation of duties between trading and operation. This prevent excessive control by one person and reduce the risk of fraud, like in the Berlin case. And next, strengthening internal control and audit process. Regular and independent review are essential to identify any unusual activity early. Strengthening internal control and audit help maintain transparency and accountability within the company. Lastly, implementing the whistleblower policy. A whistleblower policy protect employees who who report misconduct. It encourage openness and help management detect internal problem before they escalate.
As the company secretary of Evergrande Group, I would have strongly advised implementing a more disciplined and transparent government framework to prevent the crisis. Firstly, I would recommend establishing a more independent and qualified board of directors with expertise in finance, risk management, and real estate to enhance oversight and challenge unsustainable decisions. Secondly, I would push for the adoptions of a comprehensive enterprise risk management system, including regular debt stress tests and limits on leverage to ensure financial sustainability. Thirdly, I would advise restricting diversification to sectors aligned with the company's core competencies, avoiding risky and unprofitable venture. During the early signs of crisis, I would facilitate clear and honest communications with stakeholders, including shareholders, regulators, and home buyers, to maintain trust. Lastly, I would propose ongoing governance training for directors and senior executive to instill a culture of accountability, long-term thinking, and ethical corporate behaviors, factor essential for restoring confidence and preventing similar failures to in the future.
As a company secretary, I believe that the recruit scandal could have been managed with greater responsibility and transparency. If I had found myself in that role, my foremost priority would have been to implement immediate internal accountability measures. This would include initiating an independent investigation and creating a crisis management task force. Transparency is very essential in circumstances like this. I would have counseled the board openly to recognize the issue at the beginning, outline clear timelines to correct their measures, and maintain open lines of communication with stakeholders like regulators, investors, and the public. Furthermore, I would suggest the establishment of strong internal control and ethical compliance in the company, which would include a well-defined corporate governance code and policies for whistleblower protection. Such initiative can bolster through regular training sessions, particularly for senior execs, and to guarantee that all employees are aware of the limits acceptable behavior. As a secretary, it is also my responsibility to ensure the board operates effectively, so I would advocate for reforms at the board level, which includes enhancing independence, diversifying perspective, and improve oversight for their executive decisions.
As a company secretary, one of the suggestions that can be given is to implement a stronger internal auditing mechanism which enhances risk management framework, and then to enforce strict compliance with IFRS and a full disclosure principles. This will eliminate managerial influence over external audits activities. And lastly, to conduct regular training on governance and compliance. This is to promote integrity and ethical conduct on all levels.